Oh, library, your local library. And the librarian, divine library. So who is the greatest librarian? Isn't it Jehovah? He's the greatest librarian.
Hi everybody, my name is Jake. I'm a former Jehovah's Witness, current optimism trying to haver, and smoke blowing awayer. Thanks for joining us. This is the Sunday service, contact lenses edition, and this is a live stream where every week I hang out with my chat and we check in on my old cult and many people's in chat's old cult Jehovah's Witnesses, and kind of see what they're up to, see what our old cult leaders are up to, and make fun of them. So thank you for joining me. I'm just going to get all the nonsense words out right up top. So last week's stream, actually, you know what, before we get into that, let's establish I have ADHD, so me losing my train of thought and starting a new one is going to happen a lot. Our subject today is we're gonna get to what the title of this is, which is that a user on Reddit leaked this recording that they made, I believe at a convention. We'll look at the post to get the full details. But David Splane, my least favorite governing body member, talked about apostasy being spiritual pornography. And apparently this is a term that has showed up maybe in other groups as well. So we'll listen to that. It'll be super inspiring and great. It's always significant to me, just the vitriol that they have for apostates, which is their word for just anyone who openly criticizes the religion and who used to be a Jehovah's Witness. So somebody who leaves intentionally and sees fit to talk about it like I do, they're treated like pornographers, and gangrene, a gun in the hand of a child, is how I was described by an elder during my judicial committee. But also, they don't call them judicial committees anymore. We have a lot to get to. But first, I want to do something, and I don't think I have a bumper for this yet, but I really should. I should have something called Jake's Apology Corner. I don't have that, so I'm just going to settle for the Jake's Nitpick Corner intro.
Why is it necessary to be so picky, to be so fussy?
So that was David Splane, which is apropos. But last week's stream, I was like super mopey and woe is me. I think the general vibe of America was pretty negative, and I don't know. I was being real, I don't know, cynical about my YouTube channel, which is a silly thing to be cynical about anyway. And one of the things I talked about was that I don't know if I want to really even bother doing interviews on the channel anymore, because it feels bad when you reach out to someone and they don't get back to you, and that's really it, just like feelings and emotions. But I was like, that's not actually a very good reason. So one person actually reached out to me. It was Heliocentric, the guy who's been kind of making the rounds on all of the JW groups on Facebook that I'm in and on Reddit. He's an atheist YouTuber who recently went to a Kingdom Hall, and he saw my stream and said that we should chat. So we're going to talk tomorrow and record something and release that. But I also decided, I should just really, why not just shoot my shot at, just people who I would genuinely be super excited to have on the channel. And so one of the things that I like to talk about more broadly than cults is just misinformation and conspiracy theories. And I was hoping to make that more of a focus on the channel this year. And I don't know, got a little overwhelmed by it, got mopey about that, the video that I made not getting as many views, whatever. So I was like, well, I would like to interview a journalist who's covering modern online conspiracy theories and stuff. And so I reached out to a legit journalist, and they said yes immediately. And so I recorded this interview on Friday. It came together really fast, and it'll come out in the next couple days. I'm pretty excited. If you're an online person, you'll know who this person is. I still can't believe it happened. So I guess that was a weird brag. The apology corner sometimes turns into the brag corner, and we need a drop for that too. But I don't have that. What I do have is clips from this thing that I made for some reason. I don't know why, but every year I do an awkward silence supercut of, like, I think I've done it for the annual meeting, but I've just been kind of obsessed with the latest convention. I was just sent a stream of it. They record some and put them on this online server they have. Jehovah's Witnesses do. It's called JW Stream, and it hosts like temporary files, and they can live stream the annual meeting, for example. And so somebody sent me the JW Stream of the entire convention, and I very quickly was like, I want to do the awkward silent supercut about the entire convention. And obviously that's taken quite a long time. Do you know what's sad about this? Is actually Bo is not locked out of the room. If he was, I would shut this window all the way because it makes the lighting a lot better. But no, for some reason today, he's like, no, I don't want to be in the room when he's recording, and I don't care about the window. But yeah, so I've been working for a long time on, so just like when I'll be honest, I like to keep it real on this channel. When I'm stoned and just like need something to do idly, I've been working on this awkward silent supercut, and I've really only got through like 3/4 of the way through Friday, which is one day. And so I released for patrons and members part 1 of Friday, which itself is only one part of the 3-day convention. So it's going to be really, really long. Let me know, like, I think just because it does take a lot of work, and I'm actually kind of happy with how this, what I thought was a rough cut turned out. I think I'm just going to release it as a legit video, and maybe I'll show part of it later. That intro clip of the guy talking about the Divine Library is from the convention. So maybe we'll get to that a little later. What was that?
I hate the library.
Oh, Christina really hates the library part. I showed her that. And she just started going, no! It was amazing. Okay, so let's get to this thing on Reddit. Oh god, it just started playing immediately. So, this is just my screen recording because I thought it might be something that Watchtower would try to take down. But they haven't so far, at least as far as I know. So let's shout out Monica TJ, who recorded this. They say, Convention Pearls is the title, which is great. About a month ago, I posted about apostate literature in Splane's eyes. Today I have recording. These words, apostate literature, spiritual pornography, appears in the end of the recording, but I gave you some context. Okay. Oh, so it also says, P.S. This talk was translated in my native language. And so when you listen to this recording, you can hear, like, the translator, like, after some of his talking. Oh, that's actually a good idea. I really liked doing having a bunch of people on to react to the beard announcement when that happened. That was really fun. So I really should do that. Oh yes, Blue Envelope. He did a much more ambitious supercut than I did on the channel. I did this video, like, it was a supercut that started with just all the times that the governing bodies say that they love you very much. And Blue Envelope did what I had originally intended that video to be, which he really went through. And I think, like, he's got a long version and a short version, but I think the long one's like a half hour long. Maybe we can look at some of it later because it's really great. Of just all the times that the governing body are patting themselves on the back and the members reflecting that. It's really great. And it doesn't have, my annoying zooms and stuff. So it's like a genuinely useful thing to show people. I think this is a legit good question, I was kind of dunking on that guy for mispronouncing the word librarian. But really good question. Who is the greatest librarian of all? My pick is the guy in Beauty and the Beast, the cartoon version, the obviously the best version. When Belle goes in, there's a little librarian guy, and obviously there's only 5 books in that poor provincial town, and he just gives her a book. And I always thought that was the coolest. That was the coolest guy. But honestly, the Beast probably has the best library and the most divine library in all of the land of France. I think that takes place. Okay, that was a sidebar. Let's listen to David Splane. It is a little quiet, so I'll repeat back what he says. This is like a surreptitious recording on somebody's cell phone.
Immovable. That means to be settled.
This part's not important.
And to be unshakable in our faith.
He's talking about being unshakable in your faith.
Someone hurts your feelings.
Someone hurts your feelings.
Maybe a respected elder or a circuit overseer.
Perhaps a respected elder or a circuit overseer hurts your feelings. Let's put a pin in this, by the way. This JW narrative that people leave and become apostates because of hurt feelings.
Or we're passed over for a privilege we feel we should enjoy.
Maybe we don't... Wait, what did he say? I kind of missed that. We don't enjoy a privilege we feel we should enjoy?
Passed over for a privilege we feel we should enjoy.
We're passed over for a privilege we feel we should enjoy. That's a lot of like JW loaded speak at once. So what he's saying is this is a volunteer organization, but there are still, it's hierarchical. Hierarchical? It's a tough one. And some people, like, you're encouraged to reach out for what they call privileges, a word that they made up to trick people into doing work for free. To quote myself, I think I said that in a video one time. Sorry, realized that after the fact. And so you're encouraged to reach out for what are like positions in the Kingdom Hall and the organization. So if you work behind the little desk where they keep literature and people can place their orders for publications, that's a privilege. Just carrying the microphone is a privilege. I think we talked about that ridiculous elder's letter where women are a last resort to be able to carry a microphone. That is a privilege, mostly reserved for men. And so some people, you work up in your head. The only real way that you're able to attain value in the organization is if you have privileges, because it's a religion that's all about optics and the showy display of one's means of spirituality. And so you build up in your head like, well, I want to be a good Jehovah's Witness and I want to prove to everyone that I'm good. So I'm going to reach out for this privilege. And then if you don't get it, it feels like you were passed over for a promotion.
We don't allow these things to stop us or even slow us down in our worship of Jehovah.
We don't allow these things to stop us or to even slow us down in our worship of Jehovah. That's really challenging to unpack because slowing down spiritually is almost like a mental process, right? Because a lot of PMOs, people who are physically in, mentally out, who watch like streams like this because they know it's not true, they know that religion's not true, they can appear as if they're not slowing down when mentally they have. So I don't know if this is a coherent thing that he's saying.
A relative wants us to read apostate literature, perhaps a book.
I like this part. A relative wants us to read apostate literature, perhaps a book. Perhaps a book such as Crisis of Conscience, which I can't actually show you, but I got it right here. It's because it's holding up my microphone closer to my face. What I find really interesting, and by the way, on my list, it has been on my list for the last year, is to remake my rebuttal to that David Splane talk, where he talks about apostasy, because like the quality of the video is absolutely terrible. Like the video quality, the audio's out of sync, and the audio's bad. It's a huge embarrassing failure. So I want to read to you that because I think it's a really important talk, and he's kind of giving a remixed version of it here. But one of the things that's tricky is that Jehovah's Witnesses, like the leadership, is so worried about people looking or seeking out apostate stuff that they kind of refuse to define what it is or what so-called apostates are even saying. So that talk is really bizarre because the whole time he's not describing what it is that like what apostates are saying, while at the same time saying, obviously, if we see anything apostate, we want to stay away from it. But the thing is that I think they've settled on is if something seems negative, that then it's apostate. If it's negative towards Jehovah's Witnesses, it's apostate. There's a couple of good chat comments I want to shout out. Emily Lopez says it's also a way to form a hierarchy and cliques in the congregation, referring to privileges, I believe. All congregations had an exclusive club and elders and pioneers. Yes, that's extremely true. I think a lot of people's experience in the organization, like people who leave, it's very contingent upon if you're in a clique or not. And I definitely was. And it's something I didn't appreciate until I left and started listening to other people's stories. But you're absolutely right. It creates these social circles that if you want to, like, there's an incentive to want to break into those things. These are supposed to be your friends, but you kind of have to have privileges to be considered friendship material. Also, based Schuyler Black playing Zelda right now and listening. That's exactly what I was doing before I started doing this. I've been playing the shit out of some Tears of the Kingdom to the detriment of everything else in my life. I don't know why. I just got really back into it. Shout out to XJWMJ. And yes, this is exactly the vibe. They tell lies about things and stuff. That's about as specific as they get.
Well, would you read pornography?
Ah, so here we go. He's like, would you read pornography? Would you now?
Why would you read spiritual pornography?
Whoa, why would you read spiritual pornography? The tricky thing, he's really killing two birds with one stone here, because a lot of people do read pornography, watch pornography, a lot of elders. I would be legitimately shocked if it turned out, if we were just able to get an unfettered look at the governing body's browser history and none of them watched porn. That would be the shock of the century to me, unless it turns out that they, like the Heaven's Gate people, have like a weird ceremony where they castrate themselves. I think, yeah, that's really creepy. Tears of the Kingdom rules. By the way, I'm getting obsessed with it on my second playthrough, and I've discovered like 90 million things that I just didn't see at all. What a game. But back to pornography.
We found the truth.
Yes.
We don't need to look elsewhere.
This is also good. We found the truth. We don't need to look elsewhere. This is the most incoherent thing that they say. And it's something that, like, I tried to call my family out on, but they are unable to hear it. Which is, the Jehovah's Witnesses want to convince people that they don't have the truth. Like, they're trained to go and talk to Catholics and Protestants, whatever, and tell them, like, no, the Trinity isn't wrong. You think that you have the truth, but you don't, and here's why. But if somebody tries to do that to Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't have the truth, and here's why, then you're out of luck. You're just out of luck. You already found the truth. Like, no, for real this time, there's no reason to question ever again. If anyone ever tries to get you to read a book that makes you question your faith, that's from Satan. Absolutely unreal. That's probably mostly it. There's 2 seconds left.
And then Paul says, having...
Yeah, that's basically it. So, what I like about this recording is that the governing body and Watchtower speakers in general are much less guarded when they're doing a convention. That iconically horrible infamous, I think is the word I was looking for, quote of Sam Hurd, that there's a recording of him talking about how small women's brains are and how their brains are smaller than men. And that was a recording, I believe, obtained at a convention, it wasn't from JW Broadcasting. And that's one of the reasons why I've really liked this JW Stream convention, is because it's not as polished. People are less guarded than they would be if it was going to be on JW Broadcasting. Like, they obviously wouldn't let somebody mispronounce the word library over and over if it was going to be on JW Broadcasting, but this isn't. So there's just a lot of weird little things that I think are more reflective of the JW experience. And so this is something that is difficult to explain to people who are trying to like hold Watchtower to account. I did a members stream last week, and I think I mentioned here that I'm working on a video about the lies that Watchtower tells in courts and in litigation regarding CSA. And so I was thinking, actually, maybe after this we could watch some Gary Bro talks, because Gary Bro was deposed earlier this year, and there are segments of that deposition, the transcript of it anyway, in these court documents, because Watchtower, this was in the Montana case, Kikert versus Watchtower, and they were so deceptive, clearly and visibly deceptive and misleading, and they contradicted their own like affidavits. They basically incurred sanctions against Watchtower. The courts were able to show, like, hey, these guys they're intentionally obfuscating, and we can demonstrate that, and it cost Watchtower like $150,000. What's hard when you're trying to like prove how harmful Watchtower is as an environment is that even as bad as all the public-facing stuff is, it's so much worse on the inside. Like, the meetings, the weekly meetings and the conventions are even cultier than the stuff that they put out in public. Thank you to Bella, by the way, for a $4.99 super sticker. If you are thinking about giving me money, you should. I think that's a good thought, and you should follow it to its logical conclusion. Before we get into whatever the hell Gary Bro's been saying, to see if we can take for some spiritual cringe, I want to show a little bit of this edit because it's fun. All right, let's see. Who do I want to show you? I'll show you not even my favorite guy. There's a lot of guys. We go through a lot of guys. I think this guy's really funny. I'll rewind a little bit. So, my intention with doing these is always to literally just go through and compile all the awkward silence, but inevitably they say funny things, and so throughout the awkward silence it's interspersed with, gags, you could charitably call them. So if you want to see this early, the whole thing, it's a little over 15 minutes of this kind of shit, and it's up for patrons and members and stuff. This is another interesting, I'm glad that Falling Tower said this. I once had a kid give a comment, I don't know what pornography is, but I'd like to find out, and hand the mic back. That's incredible. I love that. If any other commenter had told that story, I might not believe it, but Falling Tower is a reputable source. That's another thing, is like, they're using, and Jennifer M. pointed this out, Jennifer says, to me, it's just so inappropriate using the word pornography in the Kingdom Hall with kids there. I look back at all the inappropriate stuff said at the Kingdom Hall when I was a kid. Yeah, it's really bananas. It's quite bananas. All the things that children are forced to listen to at the Kingdom Hall. And yeah, you just have to hear stuff like that. Like at these conventions where David Splane was talking about spiritual pornography, there's just kids there, there's babies, toddlers, and I think we talked on stream a couple weeks ago about how weird it is. Like if you were a kid and had to give a Bible reading that talked about like spilling semen upon the ground, they brag. One of the things that Watchtower does, actually, and I'm glad this is getting brought up because maybe that could be something that could be mentioned in this video. they brag about the fact that they don't have Sunday schools, that they don't separate children from their parents. In my opinion, this is pretty easily disprovable because the arrangements for field service, the entire field service structure where a lot of abuse takes place, children are often separated from their parents because everyone's with their spiritual family. I, as a kid, was sent to work with other adults who were not my parents. And you can imagine the power dynamics where, like, if an elder was driving the car and he had a JW parent would trust an elder with their kid, and they do, and that's when abuse can happen. But they brag about this lack of Sunday school thing, and like, no, the whole family's there together. But these are not necessarily family programs. And having to listen to this kind of stuff, I mean, I don't think you could really qualify it as abuse legally. I might subjectively think it is, but I don't know. I don't think we can take down all of Christianity. Sorry, big slurp water noise. God, I'm so annoyed by this dry spot on my face. I swear to God, it's not a zit. It's just like this dry patch of skin. Driving me crazy. Sound off about your skin troubles in chat. I need to talk to Wally about his skincare routine. That would be... That guy's got some skin. Speaking of awkward silences, me just talking about Wally's skin and then going all quiet. Okay, so I'm going to show a little bit of this guy's weird talk. Not this guy. He's going to introduce the speaker. And this will just be a little preview. We'll bonus.
Well, it's just like one scholar said concerning Luke. Luke is a beaver. My man. Brother Mark Laftany will now kill the child.
We will leave this symposium visibly troubled. John's gospel is unique in a number of ways. Let's just mention 90. First of all, we get to see our Lord Jesus Christ come, and it's remarkable. Another way is that 3% of this account is disgusting. The book of John begins with the three simple words, who is it? He is there, and he is there where all. He's sitting on their left elbows, propped up by breasts and ass. Yes, Jesus is beginning to come longer than anybody.
In fact, some of the 12 become nervous and
Come upon the pillows of Jesus. Just think about it. They were best friends. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Lord. Jesus' first miracle of turning water into fish. Let's talk a little bit more about breasts.
John leans back upon the breast of Jesus.
Upon the breast of Jesus, or the bosom of Jesus. That Jesus, the Son, was in the bosom
of his Father.
Because of this special friendship with Jesus, this intimacy between Father and Son, together as Father and Son, a very special friendship. You can just imagine how special that was. How special Jehovah and Jesus, Jehovah and Jesus. They were co-workers. The Gospel of John is found in...
Okay. There you go. I like that talk. It's really creepy. The perfect bosoms of Jesus. I know. Scott Jones, by the way, friend of the show. I'm a bad friend because he has DM'd me on TikTok, and I keep forgetting to respond. I'm also very bad at TikTok, so sorry, Scott. I'm going to get my ass in gear. This seems like a good a time as any to say that I'm almost definitely going to delay Not a Cult just because of the general busyness of life, and I think I underestimated the amount of time I would need to edit and stuff. But it's coming along nicely, I can tell you that. So yeah, let me know what you thought of that awkward silent super cuts thing of that one guy's talk. And if you thought, I want to see an hour of that, you're going to love this inevitable 3-day long supercut. But let's go to JW.W, as I like to call it. So, first of all, fuck these guys. It's like honestly hilarious. The opportunistic front pages, like there was just this assassination, and now they have a thing about political violence. They had to change that from people don't trust politicians anymore. Also, yes, please like the stream. And I'll just say as a preview, like this interview is definitely a different, like the interview that I was talking about earlier. I interviewed a journalist who talks about, conspiracy theories that form on the internet, and they're covering conspiracy theories about this assassination, and it's a really useful flashpoint because we're kind of seeing it all unfold in real time. So it's definitely more political than I would normally get in a main channel video, but I wanted to talk to her because she's talking about left-wing conspiracy theories as well. Both sides, everyone. Both sides. No, I think you'll like it, and I'll stop talking about it. Okay. I'm a little conflicted. Do I want to talk about Gary Bro, or do we want to look at Malenfant? Because I can do an impression of his voice. Showing emotions without reservation. I think we have time to do both. I got to keep it to a tight 90 because we're actually, Christina and I are meeting up with another ex-JW couple who are rolling through town. So that's exciting. And we're going to meet him for lunch. It's a lunch party, Kevin.
Rejoice with those who...
Oh no. Well, here's the thing. If I speed him up, my impression of him won't sound accurate.
rejoice. Weep with those who weep. You know, when you think of the ancient nation of Israel,
When
the
you
Jewish
think of the
people and how
ancient
they
nation of
responded
Israel,
to happy situations or to sad occasions, as a general...
sad occasions. You got a little raspy there. I know I've said this before, but he was the guy doing morning worship when I was at Warwick. They let us do morning worship. I think I did it at the Tuxedo Complex, which isn't what it sounds like. It's the location is known as Tuxedo, New York. You'd be forgiven for thinking it's just where Watchtower makes tuxedos.
Rule, they had few,
He gave them morning
if
worship.
any, inhibitions.
And he was very funny.
They did not hold back their emotions, their feelings.
William Malenfant never holds back his emotions or feelings. The head of the Evil Interrogation Department.
They would rip their garments out of sorrow or stress, or they would dance and cry out joyfully because they were so happy. Think of King David.
Think of
when
him.
the Ark of the Covenant was brought to Jerusalem.
Why are we
Here
doing this?
was a grown man who was the king of Israel.
King David was a grown-ass man. Emphasis on ass.
2 Samuel
And
chapter
grown.
6, verse
Secondary
14
emphasis.
says, David was dancing around before Jehovah with all his might.
Please listen. The reason why I want more people to subscribe on Patreon and stuff is because I want to be able to make more silly edits of these guys. When I just hearing him talking about dancing around, I'm like, we can have fun with. I could edit him saying silly stuff. There's only so many hours
Picture
in a day.
David in your mind's eye dancing around before the Ark of the Covenant. But
oh, by the way, let me know if is it like echoing in the microphone, because I don't have my headphones charged, so I'm raw dogging it audio wise. That's an appropriate way to phrase that, and I can just mute my mic while he's talking. I agree. I think I'm making him sound more Malenfantius than normal. No echo. Good deal. No echo. What is this? This room echo isn't in here at all.
I was going to say, Echo's not in here.
I had to do that because I knew Christina would if I did.
isn't it wonderful, really? that David was so free of inhibitions that he did not even think or care for an instant what someone might think of him for what he was doing? David was fully absorbed in the joy of Jehovah.
You know, it's less fun to watch the talks when they don't say Jehoho instead. What I like about this talk so far is that because the title is Showing Emotions Without Reservations, that is a reminder you have to make as a Jehovah's Witness, because they're like grading on a curve when it shows to showing emotions. But because he's giving a talk about emotions, he's like even 10% more William Malenfant than normal.
Like David was dancing around. He was doing the Cleveland Shuffle, shaking his grown man ass up and down Jerusalem.
That's just what he said word for word.
And it's truly beautiful. Now, think of David's wife, Michal. How did she feel about David?
By the way, I think a good pull quote for Not a Cult would be ... psychosexual but okay. Jenny Bloom. That's what I've, as the book comes together, is more psychosexual than I had intended, which I guess means it's authentic.
Dancing around in the street, leaping with joy.
Dancing, leaping like
Did
a
she
ballerina.
rejoice with David? No. She was not thinking either about Jehovah, his worship, or about the happiness that David had because of the Ark of the Covenant coming to Jerusalem. Rather, she was focused only on herself and perhaps on her dignity as daughter of a king and wife of a king.
A king and wife of a king.
Wow, the stretching that they're having to do to make form a parable about showing emotion is crazy. Like, very unclear what this biblical account actually has to do with showing emotion, even though he is trying to put this spin on it. It's going over my head.
But the joy of Jehovah was sadly missing. She could not bring herself to rejoice with David, who was rejoicing.
That's fucked up.
It's really sad when you think about it.
Right there, a little non sequitur of him just saying it's really sad when you think about it. Kind of thing I want to edit. Sorry, I am a little stoned, so I'm in an editing mindset when that happens now.
She was a prisoner of exaggerated self-importance and pride.
The nerve of this guy talking about exaggerated self-importance. And this is coming from me, by the way. You know, it takes one to know one.
William Malenfant, rejoicing eagerly with the wife of a king.
Many people today show their emotions, and many do not.
Wow.
Some of us may have been taught by parents or others that we should refrain and restrain ourselves and not show emotion. And in some cultures, this is basically the rule. Don't show any emotion. And we must admit that, yes, self-control is a good thing. However,
we must admit that. By the way, we'll concede that point fully. No argument from William Malenfant. Self-control is good. But cultures that aren't emotional enough for his taste are bullshit and anti-biblical. It's odd, though, because their version of what constitutes emotion is the guy that gave the library talk. That's why I was really obsessed with that guy, is he's kind of like, he's supposed to be giving like a loving talk. He's trying to have this empathetic emotion. That's what he's going for. But it just sounds like he's kind of going mad and weeping at the same time. And gnashing his teeth. And like that is considered to be displaying emotion, but when you watch it, it doesn't actually resemble earnest emotion. It seems like he's putting on a fake emotion that only slightly resembles real life emotions.
We do not want to be controlled by inhibitions, feelings.
Inhibitions. Why did he say it like that?
Not want to be controlled by inhibitions.
All right, we gotta slow it down. inhibitions. I like it when they do a little voice. David Splane is the king of this. He likes to do like a dumb guy voice, like, oh, somebody died from a blood transfusion? Buh. They like to do that. Stephen Lett will do a dumb guy voice. And I think he's doing a little dumb guy voice on inhibitions. Let's get the slow motion replay.
We do not want to be controlled by inhibitions.
Inhibitions. Subtle. It's right at the end. But your boy caught it.
Feelings that make us self-conscious and unable to act in a relaxed and natural way. That type of control is really not necessary. The counsel from Paul tells us to be unafraid to show emotion, and especially when comforting others or when we rejoice with others. For example, I remember a convention back in 1968 in Washington, D.C. My wife and I were serving.
Here's, this is just, I'm going to give you little editing tips as I go. One of the hard things about making, like, YouTube poops of the Jehovah's Witness talks is that they always speak as we. They speak as, like, a we collective. So, like, I really like the channel Tall Bart, just because that's a modern channel that's doing it really well. But, like, PragerU videos are infamous. They're, like, infamously easy to make YouTube poops of, because you just have people saying, like, I do, that, like, people talking about themselves. You can make it seem like they're, shit-talking themselves or making funny admissions. But witnesses don't do that. So, like, they so often talk in the third person. So it kind of limits your options. So whenever there's, like, a little video where they give a personal anecdote, it's kind of, that's a spiritual gem. That's all I'll say. It's a poopy gem. And you know what? I'll justify that tangent. I literally have had people ask me for advice on how to make YouTube poops. So to the one person who did that, you justified this tangent. Thank you.
A special pioneers at that time in D.C. And at the convention, it was at RFK Stadium.
Whoa!
The drama about Jephthah's daughter was being presented. And sitting...
Meanwhile, at RFK Jr. Stadium, everyone was dying of brainworms.
Sorry. That was the best I could come up with on short notice.
Behind us that day was a district overseer and his wife. Well, it got to a very emotional part in the drama, and I turned and looked back at the district overseer.
Let's just... This is 1968. So we're definitely in stage drama territory. Now, we've watched some of these on the channel. They're not... I don't know. They're not like a constellation of human emotion, necessarily. It's like... Well, honestly, the Heliocentric did an amazing impression of, like, Jehovah's Witness speech. And the way he put it was, like, people, like, smiling while reading, like, like, advertisement copy. Like, Jehovah is doing this. Hey, Jephthah, what's going on with your daughters? Like that kind of thing. And it's not very emotional. And like if someone's ever sad, they're like, oh, Jehovah, I keep crying because I am a sinful son of a bee. Word for word from one of the dramas. So the premise of this is that this is a really emotional part of the drama, and apparently someone's going to start crying. So I'm loving this, because the idea of crying during a stage drama, I kind of get it with the more recent ones where there's emotional music and it at least looks like real people, but this would have been white men with beards held with spirit gum and like a prosthetic nose, lip syncing to a pre-recorded Watchtower drama.
That day was a district overseer and his wife. Well, it got to a very emotional part in the drama, and I turned and looked back at the district overseer, and I could see big tears coming down his cheeks. Isn't
Some
that
say they have the
interesting?
biggest tears.
He was unafraid to show his emotions, his feelings. He was captivated by the drama. He wasn't embarrassed because tears were flowing from his face. That is quite a wonderful thing, not to have such inhibitions that we're so afraid someone might see us with a tear running down our cheek.
Unafraid to have no inhibitions. This is really wild. The only reason why this is a notable anecdote is because circuit overseers are in such a prominent position of authority in the organization. So it would be like even I saw a congressman one time crying. Like, I don't know. It seems like what he's trying to say is we think of circuit overseers being all business and never showing any emotion at all. But this guy sobbing like a little baby, like a little poopy diaper baby crying for his mommy, watching a stage drama where they had to pretend that the earth split open, so they just stand like, whoa.
Haven't you become teary-eyed on occasion when watching a video, perhaps about our courageous brothers?
We hope
We've
so,
all had
that's
that
the point.
take place. On such occasions, we should not be afraid to show our feelings, especially when we go to comfort someone and be of help to them.
It reminds me of the Bible passage, the way the Pharisees are described as making these overly dramatic displays of prayer in public spaces to kind of piety signal. Did that read as a play on virtue signal? Now, Jehovah's Witnesses would, of course, deny that because they're like, no, that can't be, because we talk about how the Pharisees are bad all the time. So I'm pretty sure when we do stuff like that, we're fine. But that's what it feels like. That's what was really interesting about the heliocentric video, was his perception as somebody who had never been to a kingdom hall and had limited knowledge about how Jehovah's Witnesses work. The kindness was off-putting and fake to him, at least if I'm reading his video, right? We'll talk tomorrow in an interview, sort this all out. But that was really fascinating. So these big emotional displays, when he was like, be really openly emotional, like don't be afraid to cry during our video propaganda. It's just going to reinforce to everybody that they should be crying too, and that works out great for our bottom line. But I just don't think they have any self-awareness as to how they come across. They think they're cooking. They think they're cooking with this. Teary-eyed at cat videos, not a JW propaganda. What did I get teary-eyed watching recently? Because I did. It was something stupid, too. It was something like 30 Rock. I don't know. But I get teary-eyed watching movies and shows all the time. That's one of the reasons why I watch Lost a lot. It's because it's a show that sometimes it gives me a good cry. You know, sometimes we just need a good cry, everybody. The governing body has decided that you can now use your Christian conscience and show emotions. Yeah, they're treating this like as a huge announcement. Emotions now legalized.
You can now demonstrate the following emotions legally in the congregation. A, tears. B, laughing at my jokes. End of list.
Emotions can transmit the feeling to others. They can see in your face, they can feel in your voice the emotions that you have. And many times that can be more powerful than even the words you
It's called energy. It's called morphic resonance. Look it up.
speak to comfort a person. Something else that's good to keep in mind is that not everyone experiences and expresses grief
to the
in the same way. Some want to
Worm
talk
Food,
about it,
Rotten Bones is a
and
great
that's
name,
good.
by the
That's
way.
fine. Others don't want to talk about their problems and difficulties. We
I cannot
respect
relate to those
their
people.
privacy.
Wow. We respect their privacy. Don't we, everyone? By the way, I think I am going to probably end up releasing that Weasel Words video before the CSA video. I think my eyes were bigger than my stomach on that. Like, it's going to take a while to get everything right on that. But the Weasel Words video I have planned and then like scripted out goes through the latest Watchtower and all the Weasel Words, because there's a ton. And JW Facts has a good article on the kinds of weasel words that they use. And I tried to invent a couple others. And one is the thing that I feel like we've uncovered watching so many of these videos on stream, which is what I just call, like, don't we, everyone? Or don't we, class? Like, just when they make a positive, like, affirmative statement for the collective. And that's kind of supposed to shame you as a witness. Because if you're not doing that, if you're not respecting people's privacy, you're like, oh, he's saying we do this, but I don't do this. I must be out of sync with the group.
Proverbs 14:10 says this, the heart knows its own bitterness.
All right, let's speed up old Willie Mally Fance.
And no outsider can share in its joy. And that's true. We can't really express fully what we may be feeling in our heart when we're under a great deal of stress or faced with a terrible problem.
Well, we know Watchtower writers can't do that, but some people can. Some people can express what's in their heart with human emotions. Good pause face, by the way.
Words really aren't there. We don't know how to say them. Or if we're really joyful, it may be a little bit easier to speak about how we feel. But this is a comment the Watchtower made about Proverbs 14:10.
He's citing his source,
said,
the Watchtower.
Can we always express our innermost emotions, whether sadness or joy, to others, and share with them precisely what we are experiencing? And then it adds this question, and can one at all times fully understand how another person...
And then it adds. You know, you could have just kept reading. You didn't have to say, and then I'm also going to keep reading the next thing.
...feels? The answer to both questions is no. However, regardless of what humans can or cannot understand about our feelings, Jehovah does. And there are times when he's the only one really we can go to and open our heart and realize that he can read our heart and he can see exactly how we feel and what we're going through.
I always felt like that's more of a threat as a JW. It's very intimidating to think that there's an entity that just knows every little half thought and idea that's going through your heart and brain.
It's good to remember that when we go to comfort someone, usually what is needed is empathy more than answers, comfort more than solutions. One sister who felt comforted by fellow believers after the loss of her daughter said this.
This has, like, the wisdom of an Instagram story. You know, like, sometimes what people really need is listening, not answers. Like, you don't need divineness for this. I feel like this is the kind of pithy wisdoms that I see every day on the internet.
I appreciated it when friends came over and just cried with me. She derived comfort from their company. A sister named Rachel, whose mother became seriously depressed.
Yes, exactly.
Had some interesting words to say, because when a person is emotionally distraught and depressed, they may say things at times that are rude and unkind, even outrageous. And we don't want to always take them seriously.
Feel the feelings is not a bad name for that little logical fallacy that they do, the weasel word thing. Feel the feelings, everyone.
To what they say. This is what the sister said about her mother. Many times, Mom would say something very hateful.
Mom.
Most of these
Mommy.
times, I tried to remind myself of the kind of person Mom really is. Loving, kind, and generous. I learned that depressed people say many things they do not mean.
Crazy things like William Malenfant doesn't know what he's talking about, or the governing body aren't really Jesus's brothers. They say things they don't really mean like that.
The worst thing that one can do is to return evil words or actions. Yes, so we need to calm ourselves down if we find ourselves in a situation like that. Job described really what Rachel...
Why wouldn't he read the part where Jesus talks about turning the other cheek? Isn't that the exact thing that he's going for?
Rachel was talking about with some depressed people. Take your Bible and look up Job chapter 6, verses 2 through 4.
Joe.
This he says for the pressure that poor man was under at the time.
That poor man.
So people say things, people who are depressed say things that may shock us. We just need to absorb what they say and not try to correct at that moment every wild expression.
The subtitles are really detailed on jw.org. Like, wild, in quotes, is going towards this thing that Jehovah's Witnesses talk about, wild talk. They reference this thing in Job where, like, well, sometimes people say stuff they don't mean, like maybe Jehovah doesn't exist. That's wild talk. They just said that because they were depressed. So Pimos, if you're looking to get out of a jam, that's one you can fall back on. You can fall back on wild talk.
When calmness sets in, we may be able to help the person regain his or her composure, just as Elihu did with Job. He waited for a number of days before he spoke, and then when he spoke, his words were soothing, and they helped to calm Job. So we may be able to do the same if we apply the good counsel found in Jehovah's Word.
Wow, what a huge waste of time that was. hey, we had fun. Ooh, well, this is a new watchtower. Let's sneak a peek. Let's see if there's any... They went so hard in the last... in the last one with apostasy and stuff. Oh, how to overcome doubts. This... I think everything has to stop, everyone, because I only got about a half hour left, and this is so in the pocket for what we talk about on this channel. Don't we, everyone? Well, right off the bat, a quintessential... They could not have distilled the JW essence anymore into a single picture if they could. A Jehovah's Witness man wistfully washing a window, alliteration, dreaming of paradise, which, a little greedy in my opinion. I was under the impression that we were allotted one basket of fruit, and this man's like, fuck that. Fuck a basket. I'm bringing my whole wheelbarrow, and I'm going to wheel all my favorite fruits to my favorite animals, deer. And they've got a gazebo, as we can see. Those are for resurrections. That's been established in previous videos of theirs. And they just kind of live in a normal house anyone could live in now. And actually, these are animals that you could just hang out with now. So maybe it's not paradise. Maybe he's just dreaming of his vacation home. And this one's less fun. Okay, let's see what they're saying about doubts. When I heard that phrase, spiritual pornography, that David Splane used, it sounded like the kind of thing that the Mormons would say. Larchwood said something that maybe the International Church of Christ had used that phrase before or something. And there's a phrase that Mormons use that I think is so like nefariously clever. And they use this phrase, doubt your doubts. That to me, like if I was a witness and they said that shit to me, I'd be like, oh my God, that's so true. That's like 4D chess around your doubts. So I've always been curious to see if they would lift that, because I don't know. I think you should. If you're going to steal from the best. I like people of all ages have doubts. Immediate asterisks. What if it's like, that's actually not true? Oh, they're explaining the term doubts. In this article, we are discussing doubts that cause us to be uncertain about our value to Jehovah. Oh, wait, this seems like this might be a false flag, everybody. We are discussing doubts that cause us to be uncertain about our value to Jehovah or about the wisdom of decisions we have made. These are not the kinds of doubts referred to in the Bible that can give evidence of a lack of faith in Jehovah and his promises. Well, that's not fun. I wanted to read that. I wanted to see them address actual doubts. And they're like, we're not going to talk about the thing that you're struggling with that would actually be useful. We're going to invent a problem that nobody really has. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. People of all ages have doubts at times. For example, imagine a young witness who wonders if Jehovah is really interested in him. He may be. How about you, since it's imaginary, just tell us what's going on in his brain. You don't have to be like, he may be. Like, imagine a young person who is. I don't know why they give themselves caveats within caveats. He may be unsure about getting baptized. Or think about a middle-aged brother in his youth. Think about a middle-aged brother who in his youth chose to pursue kingdom interests rather than a career in this world. With the family budget now stretched to the limit, he may be having second thoughts. Okay, well, that's close to an actual doubt about the witnesses. Picture an elderly sister with limited strength and energy. She may feel discouraged because she can no longer do what she once did. Have you ever asked yourself such questions as, does Jehovah really notice me? Have the sacrifices that I made for Jehovah been worth it? Am I still useful to Jehovah? So, 2 of those are fake. Nobody really thinks that shit. In this one, have the sacrifices that I made for Jehovah been worth it? I don't think they're going to frame this in the way that I would, which is like, did I waste my time in a cult? Well, this is disappointing. I'm sorry that I said we would stop everything. It sounds like they're just going to be talking about a fake doubt in whether or not, like, Jehovah, who definitely does exist and definitely cares about some people, just whether he cares about you anymore. But I'm really frustrated by this kind of rhetoric. Like, if you feel frustrated that you cannot do more in Jehovah's service, be assured that he treasures whatever you can accomplish. You may have the urge to compare what you do with what others can do. Resist that urge. Why? Because Jehovah does not make such comparisons. This is such bullshit that, like, that's the only reason why they give so many biblical analogies, is because you're supposed to be measuring yourself up to what servants of Jehovah did. And you're supposed to imitate their faith. And also, you absolutely are supposed to be comparing yourself to others. So I just think it's a lie. And it also shames people for, like, not doing enough free labor. Like, oh, I wish I could do more free labor. I wish I could do more backbreaking work for this group that's just going to resell the Kingdom Hall in 2 years to a Taco Bell. But I simply can't because my knee is hurt now. Gross. Jehovah's interested in you. See, like, they can't... Why wouldn't they address the doubt that God exists? This is something that I think is a good faith. I don't even know. I'm trying to think of the way to word this. If I was actually hired as a PR person to be like, okay, we're not actually going to change anything, but what can we do that we're not doing now? I'd say, well, it's kind of weird that you never address atheism at all. You never addressed even, like, fake anti-theist arguments. Because your William Lane Craigs and Ken Hams will give you a bad faith interpretation of why people lose their faith and talk about that. But Watchtower doesn't even do that. They just always presuppose that you believe in God no matter what, and that the only doubt people have is that God doesn't care about you. I think they're just afraid of atheism. I think they're afraid of even introducing the idea that some people just earnestly don't believe in God. Like, they'll mention atheists. But they don't even try to present their arguments. I don't know. Did that make sense? I'm quite disappointed that they introduced this concept of doubts and then don't do anything with it. It seems like, is alt-worldly worldly or apostate? Well, I'm both. It's kind of like a square can be a rectangle. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not a geometrist. Here, I can prove it. I don't even know if that's a real word. Oh, no. You have to wear a mask at work. That's not fun. I know the struggle. Feed your faith, starve your doubts. Yes, agreeable pixie. You know that bad feeling you get like something is just off. Just ignore it. Yep. Feels insulting. Almost a you're begging God to make your suffering stop and you got silence while he wrote you an article. All right, Scott. Thanks for hanging out. Okay. What else we got? What else? All right. Well, let's look at Gary Breh. I watched one of these on the Patreon stream I did last week or whenever that was. Newest. What's his newest shit? Protect yourself from misinformation. We watched this on a stream, did we not? I definitely watched the part where he's like, we can always trust the governing body. Like they never lie. If anybody remembers, if I covered that already, I only know that I've pulled clips from it, but I don't know for sure that I actually went over it in the stream. Prepare your heart for prayer. Organizational accomplishments. Special pioneers. Remember your faithful work. I don't know if I've ever reacted to one of these, but the organizational accomplishment videos are pretty strange. I've been kind of sleeping on that, but I found some good clips from them when doing that montage video. I was interested in pulling clips of Gary Breh. As I mentioned earlier, he was deposed, and he told some blatant lies. I've been curious to see if he gives any personal experiences in any of these videos, like just in any of his talks. Probably not. But I also have I do have the Pillowgate video. I think next week we should watch it. I think it's time, and with a special focus on Gary Bro and how we can make this miserable, sad sack look as terrible as possible. This is that's my favorite part of these videos. Maybe that's why I like them, is it has like a newsman's desk vibe to it.
When the Apostle Paul was busy preaching in the bustling city of Corinth, the account at Acts 18, verse 5 says that Paul began to be intensely occupied with the word, or as the study note in the New World Translation puts it, fully absorbed in preaching the word.
This guy denied having knowledge of what the governing body does, what their authority is. Like, he wouldn't say that he is accountable to them. He also, like, denied knowledge of what the service department did, and then they were able to get him to admit that he was actually the overseer of the service department. So this guy is, like, a real disgusting liar. He sucks. And that's why he was deposed, by the way. He was deposed as an expert witness to explain how the service department and these upper levels of Bethel work, but particularly the service department, because they're the ones who deal with CSA cases and like writing the policies and directing elders how to respond. And so a lot of the biggest creeps have passed through the service department. Alan Schuster is another person that they talked about. I'm sorry, that he was another person that was deposed. Smalley, whatever that guy's first name is. God, there was another one that we might actually be able to watch. Oh, it's Anthony Griffin. He's the guy who gave the My Mother's Sweet Potato Pie talk. That he's in the service department, apparently. And I know this because there's this amazing graphic that I'm not going to bother digging out now, but one of the records that they were able to subpoena from Watchtower was the service department manual. It's a really crazy document. It almost seems like it's written in code. Like everything has like letters and numbers assigned. It's not written out in plain English like the other manuals of theirs, but they do have in the branch manual a layout of the department, because it has to have like a emergency fire escape plan, and so you can see like it has everybody's names and where their desks are, and so it's kind of incredible. Like I was able to get, well, not just me, but we were able to get knowledge of like who all is actually in the service department. That's how I know that Anthony Griffin is in that department, and I think anybody in the service department is especially a piece of shit, because they are the most informed about how CSA is covered up in the organization, and yet they will willingly lie about it under oath. So anyway, screw this guy. Hey, goat-like personality is in the chat. Good to see
Those
ya.
words well describe the thousands of brothers and sisters
Those
serving
words
today
well
as special
describe.
pioneers. Just like Paul, they are fully absorbed in their ministry. They spend about 100 hours in service every month. With limited time for secular work, they receive a modest allowance to help with their expenses. Most of us are familiar with regular and auxiliary pioneers.
So special pioneers are the only people who get a stipend, it seems? Is that right? Their modest allowance? And it is, like, they're not downplaying it. I'm pretty sure they only get, like, a few $100s. Although, I don't know. Does anybody know? Because I would be interested to know.
Perhaps you serve as one. But what makes the special pioneer
Probably not,
arrangement
because
unique?
you got to be really special.
In this report, let's look at the important role special pioneers have played and continue to play in supporting and...
Nah, not interested. Not interested in this talk. I want to... Storytelling is an effective teaching tool. Let Jehovah mold you. I'm trying to see, like, what sounds creepiest? Let Jehovah mold you sounds creepy. Parents rejoice in your children. This could be good. Him talking about children. Well, I say good. I mean, good in terms of clips that can be used. Okay, it's 15 minutes. I can go over.
We're very happy to have hundreds of thousands of children associated with our congregations worldwide. You can be assured Jehovah loves every one of those children. Well, how can we say that?
My bad.
Well, one reason is that every child owes its name to Jehovah God.
No, it doesn't. No, they don't. You only owe your name to someone if your parents named you after them, right? So unless your name is Jehovah, that's not true. That's my objection.
Because he's the originator of life. And in fact, the originator of the family unit.
So they owe
as
their
well.
life then, not their
When
name.
Jesus was in heaven, he recognized and observed Jehovah's intense love for children. And when Jesus walked the earth, he reflected those same qualities towards children. The psalm.
Jesus was nice to kids one time in one Bible verse, and Jehovah's Witnesses are like, he was Mr. Rogers. He was the most popular children's entertainer in ancient Palestine, wherever
This
you live.
beautifully expresses Jehovah's feelings about children in the 127th Psalm.
I'm trying to
verse
figure out
3.
if you guys are
And let's read that.
pranking me.
Psalm 127 and verse 3.
Shit, you're
It
fucking
says,
kidding.
Look, sons are an inheritance from Jehovah.
Holy shit. Well, now you've watched my live reaction to finding out that Joe Biden is withdrawing from the presidential race.
Oh my god.
And you just heard Christina's live reaction, I'm assuming. Holy shit. Well, I'm glad that I'm streaming when this is happening. Christina, zoom and enhance and get all the details. See, I know. Okay, so anyway, that's cool. Oh, I'm excited.
The fruit of the womb is a reward. So not only are children a blessing or a reward, the scripture indicates that they are an inheritance as well. Yes, they are a gift to you from Jehovah. A person who hopes to inherit something usually prepares to receive it and then takes good care of it afterwards. I'm sure.
Let's try and... Even though the most insane thing is happening right now, I'm trying to focus on this guy's wording because if you notice in chat anything that we can use that kind of makes... Not makes him look bad, but just that is bad, you know? That would be good. Let me know.
That's exactly what you parents want to do with your children.
I'm sure.
While children can bring much joy, they can also cause frustration. So the question is,
does this guy have kids? That would be worth finding out. Let's see if he has a wedding ring, by the way.
how can you find joy in your children despite living in a stressful world? One suggestion is to view your children the way Jehovah does. These are special gifts to you from him. Love them.
That didn't
Make
look
them
like a
feel
wedding ring.
love.
Or no, that was his right hand, though.
It's not enough for you to know you love your own children. They need to know it. They will not know it unless you find ways to show your love to them. And as with any gift, there's a responsibility to take care of it. If we go back to the 127th Psalm, notice the illustration that King Solomon uses to explain this responsibility. It's in verses 4 and 5. Psalm 127, 4 and 5.
Yeah. Oh, God, I guess I should actually listen to what this scripture...
It says, like arrows in the hand of a mighty man, so are the sons of one's youth. Happy is the man who fills his quiver with them.
Yeah, Bear Witty, that's what we're trying to figure out. Is like, does he have kids? Or like, is he married? A lot of these higher-ups don't have any kids.
They will not be put to shame. So children are likened to arrows and parents to mighty warriors. So a warrior will take the arrow and he will...
Hey, pew, I see a wedding ring. We could Photoshop in so many things right here.
carefully aim it so he hits the target. What's the same with you parents? We encourage you, carefully direct your children in a way that, so to speak, you hit the target, so your children can have a happy, fulfilling life of serving Jehovah God. So what can help you to do that? Pray to Jehovah to help you build and maintain a strong relationship with your children. This closeness will help them to respond favorably to your good direction. Yes, the way you treat your children is going to affect not only their future, but your happiness as well.
One thing about this is it's almost so vague and broad, like it's such broad, unspecific advice that I don't know that he's saying anything that might be considered iffy. I am having a hard time describing what I even am trying to say. I guess I mean things that demonstrate a certain callousness towards the way children are treated in the organization, something that's suggestive of the religious abuse that kids have to endure, just anything that seems a little off, because kids have pretty broad-ranging experiences within Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, I obviously have talked about my parents in very positive terms. Not so much these days because they shun me, but that's not really their fault. They're Jehovah's Witnesses. But I had a really good childhood, and they weren't overly strict. I think they were good parents, but a lot of people don't. But there are certain constants that you definitely have, regardless of what level of Jehovah's Witness you are. Like, if your parents are super active or not, you are going to be instilled with some kind of fear of Armageddon. You're going to learn about Jehovah watching you all the time. You are going to be, at least in some of these meetings, where you're hearing scary Armageddon talk and random old slimy guys talking about pornography for 30 minutes. So yeah, I guess I'm trying to, like, the fact that he's giving this talk is actually useful, I think. But fuck, I'm so distracted by the fact that Biden I've really had to limit my intake of political news, because that's like my most toxic habit. Like, it's so addictive to just listen to all the podcasts and hear speculation about everything. And so I've been trying to tune it out more, and oh my God, of course it happened. Of course it happened now.
Now, there are 5 suggestions that might be of assistance in building and maintaining this strong relationship with your children. The first one, tell your children you love them. Or you might say, well, that's not the way I was raised. Well, maybe not. But learn from the example of Jehovah God.
Who's going to say that? I mean, like, there are shitty parents out there, but like, why would I tell my kid that I love them? That sounds lame. Like, I think even a parent who doesn't do that would probably say, but I do say it. They wouldn't know. I think, God damn it, I know. All right, should we just fucking abandon ship? Should we abandon ship? Let's just do this. Listen, the interview I did is pretty political in nature anyway. All right. Well, shit. Let me Let's see if this is paywalled, this article. God, make me log in my fucking accounts and shit. Oh no, what did I make my password for the NewYorkTimes.com? How am I supposed to be able to remember this shit? Oh wait, it's just through my Google account. I think the real breaking news is how fucking impossible it is to read the news anymore. That's one of the things we talk about in the interview, is how can you be informed? All right. Biden drops out of presidential race, bowing to intense pressure from Democrats. So this is the New York Times. President Biden wrote on social media that he was ending his campaign for re-election. He subsequently endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to replace him atop the Democratic ticket. That is very much expected. It was, in my opinion, like, fantasy politics aside, it's kind of the only thing that really makes any logical sense, at least from a logistical standpoint, of the fact that campaigns are things that are set up where, like, you have, like, voters, like, phone numbers, and, like, you have a bank account and access to the money that people are donating. And because Kamala is at least part of that campaign, if she dropped out, there would be some kind of havoc to be wreaked in that direction. But technically, when the president drops out, as far as I understand, because, people are voting for the top of the ticket in the primaries, but the delegates, the way our stupid election system worked, primary, if you win a state's primary, you get a certain amount of delegates. But once Biden drops out, those delegates are no longer pledged. So technically, the Democratic National Convention, they could nominate, like, somebody could challenge Kamala. She would obviously have to pick a VP anyway. The thing that I don't think anyone would do that, first of all, just because, I don't know, there's been a bit of a groundswell in support. She, like, keeping her on the ticket makes sense. Sorry, I guess I'm just speculating. Maybe nobody actually wants to hear that and they just want me to read this thing. But I'm just processing my brain. I've kind of been a little bit pro Kamala, I have to say. Like, I don't know. I've watched her recently talk about like abortion and democracy, and she's she's kind of a weird person, right? But I don't know. There's something kind of that I'm. Yes, not as weird. I think there's a floor or on how normal a politician can possibly be, because on some level you have to be the kind of person that's like, well, yes, obviously I should be the president, and that's kind of crazy. All right, hang on. I'm vamping, even though I haven't even read this announcement. So let's read it. I don't have a good Biden impression, so I have to read this earnestly. Damn, this is the statement. It's just like a Word document. It doesn't have like the official letterhead on it. It's from creedthoughts.com. Okay, sorry. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. I don't know if that's true. We have made historic investments in rebuilding our nation and lowering... I know. I'm sorry, I'm going to skip past that, because I know. I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together, we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic and the worst economy crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy, and we've revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. Okay, let me read that again. To stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to put a pin in that. I will speak with the nation later this week. Wow. Not even later today, later this week, in more detail about my decision. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me reelected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work, and let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me. I believe today what I always have. There is nothing that America can't do when we do it together. We just have to remember we are the United States of America. Bold words, those. Sorry, I'm contractually mandated to say that. What are these updates? Because a lot of this stuff is just like commentary bullshit. That's not actually information. In a post on X, Biden endorses Harris, but I don't see that. Okay, well, here's some information. This actually seems like this would be useful to learn things. Here's what to know. Staying in office. If you're just joining us, this is the New York Times. The old gray lady, it's sometimes called by annoying people. Mr. Biden said he will not resign the presidency and intends to finish out his term, even as he leaves it to others to try and defeat Mr. Trump. This is what I was hoping would happen, because the other thing that people were talking about was that he would literally resign, which would make Kamala the president, which first of all is literally the plot of Veep, which that's never a good sign. But also, that seems like it would be even more chaotic. It just seems, I don't know. Whatever. Over the next several months, the president faces the ongoing war in Ukraine and the increasingly desperate efforts to reach a negotiated deal to end the fighting between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. A political first, no sitting American president has dropped out of a race so late into the election cycle. The Democratic National Convention, where Mr. Biden was to have been formally nominated by delegates, that's how much I hate numbers. I can't even read them cold. Is scheduled to begin August 19th in Chicago. Which, by the way, I don't know. If we move too fucking slow in American politics. There's no reason that this campaign started like last year. It's not even August yet. Craziness. So the convention is not till August 19th. I'm assuming this gets rid of that virtual roll call they're going to have to do in my state of Ohio, because the local GOP tried to not put them on the ballot. That leaves less than a month for Democrats to decide who should replace Mr. Biden on the ticket, and just under 4 months for that person to mount a campaign against Mr. Trump. Are we feeling this, by the way? I haven't checked in with chat since I made the decision to abandon all pretense of talking about JW stuff. Spotlight on Harris. Yeah, no shit. The president's decision puts the vice president under renewed scrutiny, with some Democrats arguing that she's the only person who can effectively challenge Mr. Trump this late in the election. and they say the party will fracture if Democratic leaders are seen as passing over the first black vice president. But others argue that the Democratic Party should avoid a coronation, especially given Ms. Harris's political weakness over the last 3.5 years. Yeah, I'll give you my takes on that. Age a chief concern. Well, yeah, I think we know that. But let's read it anyway. Mr. Biden's re-election bid was brought down by longstanding concerns about his age and whether he remains physically and mentally capable of performing the job. Even before the debate, polls consistently showed that people thought he was too old, and majorities, even of Democrats, wanted someone younger to be president. Yeah, Mr. Biden was born during World War II and was first elected to the Senate in 1972, before 2/3 of today's Americans were even born. That's a crazy way to frame that. I'd never thought of it that way. He was elected before 2/3 of today's Americans were even born. What the fuck? Mr. Biden would have been 86 at the end of his second term. Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. God. Well, okay. If you are fascinated by this and the reaction to it, especially, sorry, how do I want to say this? Well, the first thing I need to say is I forgot what I was starting to say, so let's just totally switch brain thoughts. Yes. Hey, that's my alt-wifey. It wouldn't be such a horrible situation if Trump wasn't running as the Republican nominee. Oh, okay. That's what I was talking about. Okay, so my interview that I don't know if I'll have time to edit tonight, but it should be up by Tuesday, because it is just an interview, is with Taylor Lorenz, the journalist Taylor Lorenz, formerly of the New York Times. She currently is their lead technology columnist in the Washington Post. She started covering, it's come to be known as Blue Anon, which is sort of the conspiratorial liberal part of Twitter, X, and Threads, and everywhere, Reddit, all the social media things, and how immediately there were conspiracies, from this liberal side of the aisle about the assassination attempt, and an increasing, insistence on that, conspiracies that Biden was drugged and that's why he was bad at the debate. The sort of conspiratorial thinking that defined QAnon, and that presumably people who have become conspiratorial in the pro-Biden camp, they would have been able to see through that stuff, but anyone can be radicalized. And so that's what I thought would be interesting to talk about, is how our media environment and the way that we're all kind of siloed into these algorithms that form, it kind of just creates an echo chamber, whether you want it or not. Everybody has one. Everybody is kind of limited into what your algorithm's feeding you. So a lot of people aren't on the same page, but mostly algorithms are going to weaponize. They want you to stay on there as long as possible. So they're going to show you stuff that's really inflammatory or whatever keeps your attention. And conspiracy rabbit holes are going to keep your attention. Anyway, so that is going to be it was a really cool conversation. So that's kind of what it's about, is how conspiracy theories kind of rise on the internet, how we're all susceptible to them, and how we can be informed. Because I don't know about you, but I find it really difficult to be informed. I'm reading the New York Times. I have plenty of issues with the New York Times as a newspaper, as an institution. But sometimes those institutional problems, there's still good journalists who work there. And in fact, I think they employ the vast majority of working journalists because they are such an institution. So I have found it really hard to know, what can I even really trust anymore? And to be honest, I find myself following journalists whose work that I've respected in the past, like Taylor Lorenz, and that's one of the reasons why I thought she'd be interesting to talk to. So anyway, that's what that's all about. So he endorses Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm kind of pro. I'm kind of pro Kamala in an electoral sense. I should explain. Yeah, well, this is the other thing. So Washington Post, they have this new leadership that's come in from across the pond. I don't remember all the details of this, but they've got these like British people coming in, trying to revamp their newsroom, and there's been some scandals there because one of these guys is seen as like having paid off. I think he was caught like paying off a journalist to quash a story in the past. You know, this is somebody in this new British leadership. New York Times, there's been good reporting in The Intercept about how they've kind of, kowtowed to the Israel line in the Israel-Gaza conflict, and they've, been obviously more one-sided in their coverage. And then there's NPR, and they have a whole dealio that's been going on. They're, even by NPR standards, I think much more milquetoast than they used to be. Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. That's another thing. Although from what I understand, he was relatively hands-off. They've published articles criticizing him, but I am very skeptical of a billionaire owning a news outlet. But that's the thing, is like, regardless of the people at the top, there are still like good journalists who are trying to do the right thing. They're sometimes limited by people at the top who are choosing like the layout of this page. What is the top line story? And I think that's happened a lot with Gaza, is a lot of times I have noticed that they do report on things, but look how buried all this stuff is down on this page. Look how much smaller the text is about this, Israeli strike in Yemen. It's quite a bit down and harder to see and find than the rest of it. And even then, how accurate is it? Okay, the Harris of it all. I think that I think that she's kind of good at what she's doing these days. She is odd and incoherent. I thought that The Daily Show really nailed her. I don't know if anyone has seen this bit that they did like several months ago, but Desi Lydic, one of their correspondents, was like, I am Kamala Harris's holistic spiritual advisor, and basically kind of making fun of the kind of weird woo-woo way that Kamala Harris talks sometimes. It's really funny. But I don't know. I've heard her give some recent speeches. She seems kind of normal. Like, she kind of nailed Joe Biden in the debate in 2020. I think people forget that. Like, she did call him out for some racist things that he had done. That was something that I thought was kind of interesting about her being VP, is that she seemed like more progressive than him. And she had been critical of him. That seemed like, well, maybe that'll be good. I don't know if it really was. But I think the benefit of having Kamala Harris is that you appease people who are super pro-Biden. And, I didn't really know that contingent of people existed until I got on Threads. But there are a lot of people who are genuinely going to be super upset because they're like, this is my dude. I like him. But they also like Kamala, and presumably that would appease them a little bit. It is who he endorsed, so it would be seen as honoring his wishes to some degree. I think mostly what she needs to beat Trump is a warm body who is young and can complete sentences and form a coherent argument. And so most Democrats fit that description, and it definitely doesn't have to be. Kamala, but she can kind of share credit with the positive things about the Biden administration that people like, and possibly skirt blame, for example, his undying support of Israel. And that's something that, at least reporting that I've read, does seem to be pretty unique to him. Like, there are a lot of people in his own party who signed letters saying that, we have to condition aid to Israel. But if you look back through his career, it's something that he's always been hawkish about. And so I think there's a world, if she's like nimble enough on her feet, where she could make the argument that she was pushing for the other thing. It'll be she was the one trying to push for ceasefire. I don't even know if that's true, but I could see a world where she's able to kind of share credit and not take blame. But there's also, I think there's also going to, she's definitely going to be hammered by, I think, not just right-wing journalists about how much she knew about Biden's state of decline. There's a legitimate question about how much of what happened in the debate was the result of a deception becoming unveiled. A lot of people and a lot of the response to this from voters and the big money people and a lot of in the Democratic Party is a lot of people felt genuinely misled by his campaign. They felt hang on a second, we've seen him give speeches where he seems fine. We were told that he was avoiding these spontaneous speaking events for totally legitimate reasons. He's traveling around being the president, and that's why he didn't give a Super Bowl interview like every other president ever. But then after the debate, it's are you sure that's because he was incapable of doing it? So I think that she could potentially be hammered by people being were you covering up Joe Biden and his diminished mental state? I think there's but anybody is going to get hammered for that reason. Now, the one thing that I think also goes in Kamala's favor is the right is definitely going to try to mount some legal defense against replacing Biden on the ticket. And they've said that they're going to do that. Mike Johnson said that they're already trying to formulate that there will be a legal response for trying to replace Joe Biden on the ticket, because obviously the opposition, they want their weakest opponent. You kind of you want to choose who you're fighting against too, and an entire campaign is built around who the opponent is as much as it is who the person is. Candidate, that's the word I'm looking for. So Trump's campaign has been singularly built around the idea that he is strong and Biden is weak. And as somebody noted in chat earlier, Trump's only 2 years younger than Biden. He was the oldest president ever before Biden. The second oldest president ever is Donald Trump, and he would be in his 80s by the time he finished his second term. And so regardless of how the race went, it was going to be kind of a battle of the vice presidents. And J.D. Vance, somebody asked me how I felt about him as an Ohioan. I despise him. I don't know anybody that likes him. And I work with a lot of Republicans. I would say probably mostly just the area of town that we're in. And then most people are, I guess, probably mostly apolitical. But
yeah, he's not smart. He's actually very dumb.
Yeah, he's old, and he has, if you've seen clips of his rallies throughout this year, he's gone on some, well, not even, watch his RNC speech.
22 minutes of bladder.
It's really, he goes on some really weird tangents. Biden has a thing where he can't finish a sentence. Trump has a thing where he can't stop rambling about why Hannibal Lecter's a real person that he knows. And my favorite clip of him is just him kind of dying. He goes Russia, he just kind of he's had a lot of senior moments too. And so Republicans obviously are going to try and fight whatever this other thing is. And it does seem to me like Kamala being the vice president, well, the vice president's job is already to step in for the president. So I think because there's going to be a legal battle mounted, and there is a high probability that the Supreme Court tries to get involved, it probably makes sense to have the former VP, because there does seem to be more of a constitutional precedent for her being the president. That's just my normie take. I don't know. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, Kamala may not be a great speaker, but at least she can stop speaking when necessary.
That's true.
or finish a sentence, unlike Biden. So she
won't talk about golf as much.
she will not. So, at least in that respect, she's leaps and bounds ahead in the competition. Just saying.
Yeah. I agree. She also, like, I don't know, man. Just like she's kind of weird in the way that people I know in real life are weird, where they just kind of say like a thing like it's a real phrase, but it isn't. Yeah. So both sides can be cults depending on how deep you go. Well, a more centrist candidate than Joe Biden, I think, is literally impossible. I don't know what your perception of him is, but no, one of the reasons why like his approval ratings were so low for so long wasn't just his age, it's the fact that his own base doesn't think he's progressive enough. Like, young people don't like him because he hasn't actually done that stuff. Yeah. I think the issue is, the Democrats are a pretty centrist party. Like, the issue that we have, like, the reason why everything in the United States is a mess is because it is, we've been a two-party system for a very, very long time, and over the last 8 years, but specifically the last 4, I would say, like, the Republican Party has just accepted that they are the party of Trump, and so they have cast out all of their critics, right? So people like Liz Cheney, who's one of the more absurdly conservative Republicans that exist, she's anti-Trump, she thinks he's bad, and she talked about it, and so she's kicked out of the movement. And they have just slowly consolidated MAGA into the Republican movement to the point where, now the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is a, like, Christian nationalist who believed that dinosaurs were on the Ark and that pornography was created by Satan. Like, he believes in, he is a young earth creationist Christian zealot. And that is who pretty much everybody on the right now has to at least gesture towards that movement. They've made this big push towards getting the 10 Commandments posted in schools, a thing that is completely insane. That I would not have, like, even if I was a religious person, I wouldn't want that because, so this is what I'm saying. Like, the Democratic Party now is just everybody who's left over. So from people like Liz Cheney all the way to AOC, like, that is just now the Democratic coalition. It's just everybody else. And so that's why it's very ineffective. And I think it was the argument for Joe Biden in 2020 is that he was a normal centrist guy. And the things he's done that are progressive, are things that I would kind of expect, like climate change legislation, like, which is a thing that Obama wasn't able to get too much done on when he was a president, but it's something he campaigned on. So I don't think that should be considered progressive because it's a real thing that's happening, so that's part of the shithole we're in. I think that for most people, like, I don't think most of us have really seen Kamala in 4 years until recently. We're suddenly like, oh, wait, do we have to care about Kamala Harris again? And she's talking about coconut trees. First of all, I'll defend the coconut clip. I think what she said made total logical sense. I think it made sense. It's just funny that she said coconut tree. See, this is the thing. Why can't we get the Satan guy to be president? He's the one who's always making all this cool stuff, like pornography and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Trump has moved the GOP so far to the right that an old school centrist like Biden looks like a radical. Yeah, I think that's the issue. Like, Biden is a guy who, not for nothing, like, attracted a lot of the never Trump Republicans. Like, Nikki Haley's voters went to him because even though I think she was probably more conservative than, like, Mitt Romney, she was very vocally anti-Trump on the campaign trail until she wanted to bend the knee. Ugh. Anyway, this is crazy. Thanks for joining us in these historic times. I promise I won't make reacting to headlines part of the stream. I generally do this as a place to not think about politics. But I don't know. This is pretty fucking crazy. I mean, the fucking front runner to be the VP, let's be honest, because I think Trump is pretty broadly seen as winning the race so far. Although, you know, his opponent was a sleepy, mumbly man who could barely complete a sentence if it wasn't written down for him. And, you know, this is coming from a guy who voted for Biden. So here's what I'm saying. I forget. Oh, yeah, J.D. Vance. He sucks. He's the fucking front runner to be the vice president. And he is a guy who thinks that women should not be able to get divorced from their husbands. Like, he takes the JW position on divorce. Even if it is abusive, it is still better to be with your abusive mate, because that's what's in the Bible. And he just is a fucking neo-Nazi guy. And I think what I really hate about J.D. Vance, and why I don't think he's actually going to help in Ohio, is because he's just seen around these parts as a guy who sold out. Like, Republicans who liked him liked the fact that he kind of seemed like a smart guy. Like, he wrote a book. People liked it. He got made into a movie. He was a guy who was, like, critical of Trump. He seemed like kind of a normal Republican. And then he kind of sold out all his values and sucked up to Trump. Like, he totally kissed his ass on the campaign trail to barely push himself over the edge for Tim Ryan. But it just kind of revealed him to be a huge sellout. And so some real severe MAGA types like him, just because, I don't know, he's one of the avatars for the movement now, but I don't think people around here really like him on both sides of the aisle. And also, I can only think what Jenny just said, which is J.D. Vance Refrigeration. And that's not helping anything. So, yeah. Scary times. But Sherrod Brown is cool. We got to see him talk a couple weeks ago. I think it's a legitimately interesting question as to who witnesses would vote for. If I can pretend to talk about witnesses for 1 second. I think about this because there are a lot of witnesses I knew who were really repulsed by his behavior in the way that Christians ostensibly should be. Like, he's a guy who cheated on his wife a million times and was known as this playboy and, you know, bragged about groping women and all that shit. So I think there's a lot of witnesses who would vote against him on those merits. I think there's like a surprising amount of Mormons who are not pro-Trump. Some podcasts I listened to told me that. I don't know. But for sure, like, there's a lot of gun-owning witnesses around here who, like, they got the pickup truck and the hunting rifles. And just culturally, I think they would be persuaded to that argument. The thing that the people he would for sure win over is the men, because he preaches that patriarchal men are better than women thing. And like, that's what Project 2025 is all about. It's like, let's go back to before women had suffrage, and maybe also black people didn't own or didn't have as many rights, and gay people, just kind of all just dragging back everything back to the pre-civil rights movement, essentially. And that is a message that would appeal to a lot of JW men, because they benefit from a world where women have, like, structurally less power, and their only way of advancing in the society is to marry a good spiritual man. And it's much easier to be a desirable mate as a male Jehovah's Witness, because you're kind of supposed to be poor. You're not supposed to have a college education. You're not supposed to have that great of a job. You just have to do as much free work for the group as possible. But that substitutes itself for status in JW land. So it's kind of easy to be a desirable JW mate relative to if they left the cult and had to just compete with, you know, all the other incels out there on the internet. well, this was interesting. This really took a turn. You got to hear my inane, progressive ramblings about nothing in particular, pretending to have expertise. But hey, I'm just glad you're here. I'm glad so many of you stuck around. We got to find out a cool thing about the world that's happening together. But yeah, I'm not planning on making a habit of it. We'll get back to a regularly scheduled program next week, and let's make a real pact right now to make it the fucking pillow videos. I think it's time. I think it's time for that to happen. So, everybody stay chill. There's only so much you can do as an individual person to change the course of, like, historical events. So as long as you're doing shit that you're, like, I don't know, as long as you're doing a little something, you're doing more than most people. And most of the decisions are made by people who you have no control over. What I will say is, like, I'm somebody who I did want Joe Biden to drop out, mostly because I was concerned that he couldn't win. But I also, I disagreed with him strongly on Gaza. So when the conversation started happening that he should be replaced on the ticket, like, I called Sherrod Brown and left a message because people were like, call your senator, call your local person. And I did, and apparently I wasn't the only one, because Sherrod Brown released a statement like, I hear these are the calls I'm getting. I represent my constituents. This is what they're saying. And I think the reality is, if he was overwhelmingly in a state where people were calling him and telling him not to drop Biden, then he wouldn't. So that's been my outlook. Do a couple things that aren't super stressful, so you feel like you're doing something. And I'm also just trying to limit my political consumption. So I'm just trying to remember that at some point you reach a point of being informed and you're just kind of like cycling through the same talking points in your head a bunch and it's driving you crazy. So anyway, now goodbye for real.